My mom left my 5-year-old daughter alone at the hospital I was born in. She didn't expect what came next. She said it was a punishment because I refused to co-sign a loan for my brother. But there were witnesses. Months later, the judge told her 5 words she would never forget. My phone rang at 3 p.m. on an ordinary Tuesday. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer because I was in an important meeting, but something made me slide the green answer icon. Hello, this is Nurse Patricia from San Jose General Hospital. We have a girl here, about 5 years old, who says her name is Emma, and we believe you are her father. The world stopped. Emma was with my mother. They were supposed to be at home watching children's movies and eating popcorn, as they had planned that morning. Excuse me, there must be a mistake. My daughter is with her grandmother. The nurse paused, a pause that lasted an eternity. Sir, the girl has been here alone for 2 hours. An elderly lady brought her, sat her on this bench, told her to wait, and then left. I ran out of that office without any explanation. The drive to the hospital was the longest 20 minutes of my life. My mind couldn't process what I had heard. My mother, no matter what problems we had, would never abandon Emma. It had to be a misunderstanding. But when I arrived at the hospital and saw my little daughter sitting on that cold bench, her eyes red from crying so much, hugging her doll as if it were the only thing she had left in the world, I knew there was no misunderstanding. Daddy. Her broken little voice tore my soul apart. I ran to her and hugged her so tightly I thought I might hurt her. Nurse Patricia approached with a serious expression. Sir, we need to talk. What happened here wasn't normal. To understand how we reached that moment, I have to tell you about my family. My mother, Carmen, was always a strong-willed woman. Manipulative would be the most accurate word. But for years, I justified it as a protective mother's love. She had this special ability to make all her children feel like we owed her something, that we had never done enough for her. My younger brother, Rodrigo, was her favorite. 2 years younger than me, but with the mentality of an irresponsible teenager at 32. While I had worked since I was 16 to help at home, he dedicated himself to changing university majors 3 times, starting businesses that failed within a year, and accumulating debts that Mom, or rather I, magically always ended up paying because Mom convinced me it was my duty as the older brother. The pattern was always the same. Rodrigo would mess up. Mom would cry. I would fix the problem. If I didn't, I was the cruel son who didn't love his family. If I did, Rodrigo never learned the consequences of his actions. This time was different. Rodrigo had found the love of his life, according to him, and wanted to buy a house to impress her. The problem was his credit history was more stained than a mechanic's shirt. He needed a cosigner, and, of course, he came to Mom's house with his charming smile and his usual promises. Son, you need to help your brother. It's to start a family. Serious this time. Mom had said, arriving at my house on a Sunday morning unannounced, as she always did when she wanted something important. Emma was playing in the garden, oblivious to the storm brewing. Can't, Mom. I already lent him money for his last business, and he still hasn't paid me back. I'm not going to risk my assets again. Her face changed completely. The mask of the loving mother disappeared, and the cold woman I knew so well emerged. What assets, son? Everything you have, you owe to this family. I raised you. I gave you an education. I taught you values, and now that your brother needs help, you turn your back on him. For the next 2 hours, she unleashed her entire emotional arsenal. She cried, reminded me of every sacrifice she had supposedly made for me, and compared me to parents who had more grateful children. Emma came into the house at some point and saw her grandmother crying. Why is Grandma crying? Daddy? It's nothing, my love. Grandma is leaving now. But Mom didn't leave. She stayed all afternoon, alternating between pleas and reproaches. When she finally understood that my answer was definitive, she rose from the sofa with a calmness that chilled me to the bone. All right, son. I see that your brother, and I mean nothing to you, but remember my words. You will regret this decision. That same week, Rodrigo called me, furious. Thanks to you, Mom is a nervous wreck. She can't even eat from the sadness you've caused her. I tried to explain that it wasn't personal, that I simply couldn't risk my financial stability again. But to Rodrigo, I had always been the selfish brother who had money and didn't want to share. The following weeks were tense. Mom didn't answer my calls, didn't come to see Emma as she did every weekend. My daughter asked about her grandmother, and I didn't know what to say, until that fateful Tuesday arrived. That morning, Mom had shown up at my door as if nothing had happened. I came to get my granddaughter. We're going to spend the day together. It's been a long time since we had grandma-granddaughter time. Emma had jumped for joy. She adored her grandmother, and I felt relieved that things were returning to normal. I even thought that maybe I had exaggerated, that perhaps we could resolve our differences. How naive I was. Now, sitting in that hospital room with Emma in my arms, Nurse Patricia explained what she had witnessed. The elderly lady arrived with the child around 1 p.m. She told her to sit here and wait, that her daddy would come for her soon. The girl asked where she was going, and the lady replied that she had important things to do and walked towards the exit. At first, we thought maybe she had gone to the restroom or to do some quick paperwork. But when an hour passed and the girl started to cry, I approached her to ask what was wrong. Nurse Patricia paused and looked directly at me. I recognized the lady who brought her. It's Carmen Rodriguez, isn't it? She gave birth here 34 years ago. I was an assistant back then, but I remembered her face because it was a complicated delivery. I nodded, completely surprised that she remembered her after so many years. When I realized she had abandoned the child, I went to the archives and looked up her delivery file. You were registered there as her son, with your updated contact information from the visits you made when Emma was born. What she told me next chilled me to the bone. My mother had not only abandoned Emma, but she had done it in the very same hospital where I was born. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a message. Sir, in my 20 years working here, I've seen many things, but I've never seen a grandmother deliberately abandon her granddaughter. The way she left, without looking back, without showing any concern when the child cried, that wasn't an accident. Emma clung tighter to me when she heard the nurse's words. She had understood more than I would have wished. Nurse Patricia had requested a review of the security cameras. Everything was recorded. My mother arriving with Emma, my mother pointing to the bench, my mother ignoring my daughter's questions, my mother walking towards the exit with a firm step, without looking back even once. I never thought my own mother would be capable of abandoning a 5-year-old girl to teach me a lesson, but there was the evidence. And in my arms was my traumatized daughter, asking me why grandma had left her alone. That night, after Emma finally fell asleep in my bed because she was afraid to be alone, I dialed my mother's number. She answered on the first ring, as if she had been expecting my call. I hope you've reflected on the importance of family, son. Her voice sounded calm, almost satisfied, as if she had just completed a routine household chore instead of traumatizing a 5-year-old. Mom, how could you do that? Emma was crying for 2 hours in that hospital, 2 hours wondering why her grandmother had abandoned her. I didn't abandon her. I left her in a safe place. I knew they would call you. I just wanted you to understand the consequences of turning your back on your family. The coldness in her voice left me speechless. This wasn't the woman who had raised me, who had comforted me as a child. Or maybe she was, and I had never realized it. Mom, she's a child. She had nothing to do with the loan issue. She has everything to do with it. Emma is part of this family just like Rodrigo. If you don't want to help your brother, then you don't deserve for me to take care of your daughter. I hung up the phone, trembling with rage. Couldn't sleep that night. Emma woke up 3 times screaming, saying she didn't want grandma to leave her again. The next day, my phone didn't stop ringing. First, it was Rodrigo. Congratulations, brother. Now mom is devastated because you treated her like a criminal. All because of your selfishness. I explained what had happened, but he already had his version of events. According to mom, Emma had gotten lost in the hospital while she was running some medical errands, and I had overreacted, accusing her of abandonment. Mom would never do something like that. You're paranoid. You surely misinterpreted the situation. Then my Aunt Mercedes called, Mom's older sister and her main ally in family drama. My dear, your mom told me what happened. Poor thing. She's very unwell. She says you accused her of horrible things. A mother never abandons a grandchild. It didn't matter how much I explained about the security cameras, the nurse's testimonies, or my mother's implicit confession. The family's official version was that I had misinterpreted an accident and was using it as an excuse to be cruel to my mother. The family pressure was constant. Cousins, uncles, even neighbors who had known Mom for decades called me to say I was exaggerating. Grandmothers make mistakes, but that doesn't make them monsters. Forgive her, my son. She's your mother. She's done so much for you all your life. But what hurt me most was seeing Emma. My cheerful, outgoing little girl had become quiet and clingy. She didn't want to go to kindergarten. She didn't want to stay with anyone but me. At night, she would ask me if she had done something wrong for Grandma not to love her anymore. I took her to a child psychologist, Dr. Martinez. After 3 sessions, she asked to speak with me alone. Emma has clear symptoms of abandonment anxiety. She is constantly on alert, expecting important people in her life to leave her. This is consistent with a traumatic abandonment event. I told her the whole story. Dr. Martinez listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes. Sir, what you're describing was not an accident or a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate act of emotional manipulation using a minor as an instrument. That has serious psychological consequences. She gave me a detailed report on Emma's emotional state and suggested I consult a lawyer. The words emotional abuse and child endangerment appeared several times in the document. That same week, my mother appeared at my workplace. The receptionist called me, surprised. Sir, there's a lady here who says she's your mom. She says she needs to talk to you urgently. I went down to meet her and found her in the lobby, dressed in black as if for a funeral, with red eyes and a handkerchief in her hand. Son, we need to fix this. The family is being destroyed by your stubbornness. Mom, you abandoned my daughter. There's nothing to fix until you acknowledge what you did. I didn't abandon anyone. Emma was safe in the hospital. I knew they would call you. I just wanted to give you a scare so you would reconsider about your brother. There it was again, the partial confession wrapped in justification. She had used Emma as an emotional blackmail tool. But according to her, that wasn't abandonment because she had a plan. A scare? Mom? You gave a 5-year-old girl a scare by making her believe you had abandoned her? You don't see anything wrong with that. You exaggerate everything. Emma won't even remember this in a few months. Children are resilient. But I knew that wasn't true. Emma would remember. She had already shown me with her nightmares and constant anxiety. My mother changed tactics. The tears disappeared, and the calculating woman I knew emerged. All right, son, if that's how you want things. But don't expect me to be available when you need help with Emma. Don't expect me to come take care of her when you're sick or have emergencies. You've decided I'm a bad grandmother, so I won't be a grandmother at all. It was the final blackmail. For 5 years, she had been my main support system with Emma. When I had to travel for work. When Emma got sick and couldn't go to kindergarten. When I simply needed a few hours off. Now she was taking all that away because I hadn't yielded to her manipulation. All right, Mom, if that's your decision. She left my office with the same coldness with which she had abandoned Emma in the hospital. But I had already made my decision, too. That afternoon, I called the lawyer Dr. Martinez had recommended. I told him the whole story, showed him Emma's psychological report, and asked if I had any legal recourse. The lawyer, Mr. Hernandez, listened attentively and reviewed all the documents. This is a clear case of child endangerment. The fact that she's the grandmother doesn't exempt her from legal responsibility. Besides, we have testimonies, video evidence, and the psychological report. We can proceed both civilly and criminally. But he warned me about the family implications. Sir, this will permanently divide your family. A lawsuit is not something easily forgiven. It's already divided, Mr. Hernandez. My mother chose to use my daughter as a weapon. Now I choose to protect her. 2 weeks later, my mother received the lawsuit notification. The main charge was endangering the welfare of a minor. Secondary charges included emotional distress and temporary abandonment of a minor. Rodrigo called me hysterical that same night. Are you crazy? Are you going to put Mom in jail for a misunderstanding? You're a monster. It's not a misunderstanding, Rodrigo. And if you had been a responsible brother from the beginning, none of this would have happened. The war was declared. The family split completely. Those who believed Mom's version versus the few who had seen the evidence and understood the gravity of the situation. But for the first time in years, I slept peacefully. I was protecting my daughter, and that was all that mattered. The trial day arrived 3 months later. During that time, my mother had hired the best lawyer she could afford, an older man in an expensive suit who specialized in family cases. His strategy was obvious from the first moment. I was an ungrateful son who had misinterpreted an accident to get revenge on his mother. The courtroom was divided like a contentious wedding. On one side, Mom with Rodrigo, Aunt Mercedes, and several relatives who supported her. On the other, me with Emma, not in the courtroom but represented, and a few relatives who had seen the evidence and understood the situation's severity. Emma wasn't required to testify due to her age, but Dr. Martinez had prepared an updated report on her emotional state. 3 months after the incident, my daughter still had nightmares and anxiety episodes when separated from me. Mom's lawyer began by painting her as a devoted grandmother who had made a minor error in judgment, a 68-year-old woman who had dedicated her life to raising her children and caring for her granddaughter. Your Honor, we are talking about a confusion that lasted 2 hours. My client took the minor to the hospital because she had a medical appointment and asked her to wait while she sorted out some paperwork. When she came out, the minor was no longer where she had left her. It was a blatant lie, but it sounded convincing. Mr. Hernandez had warned me this would happen. Then the testimonies began. The first was Nurse Patricia. The lady arrived with the child at approximately 1 p.m. She sat her on the bench in the waiting area and told her, verbatim, "Your daddy will come for you soon. Stay seated right here." The girl asked where she was going, and the lady replied that she had important things to do. Mom's lawyer tried to discredit her testimony. "Nurse, you were attending to other patients. Is it possible you didn't hear the conversation correctly?" "Sir, I was less than 3 meters away. I clearly heard what she said. Besides, the child remained on that bench for 2 hours. If her grandmother had been running errands in the hospital, we would have had a record of her presence." The fatal blow came when they projected the security camera video. There it was. Mom arriving with Emma, pointing to the bench, speaking briefly with her, and then walking directly towards the exit, not towards the consultation rooms, not towards admissions, directly towards the street. The video also showed Emma waiting patiently for the first 30 minutes, then starting to look nervous, and finally crying when she realized her grandmother wasn't coming back. When it was Mom's turn to testify, she arrived dressed like a fragile grandmother, with a cane I had never seen her use, and speaking in a trembling voice. "Your Honor, I love my granddaughter more than my own life. I would never harm her. Yes, I made a mistake leaving her alone, but I had a medical emergency and thought she would be safe for a few minutes." Mr. Hernandez pressed her during cross-examination. "Mrs. Rodriguez, the video clearly shows you walking towards the exit, not towards any medical office. Can you explain that discrepancy?" My mother faltered for the first time. I got confused. I was nervous about my medical appointment. "Ma'am, we checked all hospital records for that day. You did not have any medical appointment scheduled. Furthermore, we have your recorded phone confession where you tell your son this was a punishment for not helping your other son with a loan." Mom's lawyer stood up, objecting, but the damage was done. She had lied under oath. The most devastating testimony was Dr. Martinez's. Emma presents symptoms consistent with abandonment trauma, recurrent nightmares, severe separation anxiety, and regression in behaviors she had already overcome. This is not the result of a 2-hour confusion, but of the perception of deliberate abandonment by an important detachment figure. When Mom's lawyer tried to minimize the psychological damage, the doctor was firm. "Sir, for a 5-year-old child, 2 hours feeling abandoned by her grandmother in an unfamiliar place is equivalent to an eternity. The psychological impact is real and measurable." During the recess, I saw Mom talking animatedly with Rodrigo and her lawyer. She seemed confident, as if everything was going according to her plan. She even smiled at me when our eyes met, as if saying this was just another game she was going to win. But when we returned to the courtroom and the judge began to speak, her expression changed completely. The judge was an older man with a serious face and decades of experience in family cases. He had reviewed all the evidence with meticulous attention. I have carefully reviewed all the testimonies, physical evidence, and psychological reports presented in this case. The facts are clear and indisputable. Mom straightened in her chair, preparing for the victory she expected. Mrs. Carmen Rodriguez deliberately abandoned a 5-year-old minor in a hospital, not as a result of confusion or a medical emergency, but as a calculated act of emotional manipulation directed towards the minor's father. The courtroom fell into absolute silence. I could see the confidence drain from my mother's face. This behavior constitutes endangering the welfare of a minor and causing intentional emotional harm. The use of a child as an instrument of emotional blackmail is particularly reprehensible. The judge paused and looked directly at my mother. Mrs. Rodriguez, throughout this process, you have shown a total lack of remorse for your actions. You have lied under oath about your motivations and have consistently minimized the trauma you caused your granddaughter. Mom tried to speak, but the judge raised his hand to silence her. Therefore, this court finds you guilty of endangering the welfare of a minor and causing intentional emotional harm. Then came the part that would change everything forever. Mrs. Rodriguez, after evaluating all the evidence and your behavior during this process, this court has reached an inevitable conclusion. The judge looked at her intently and uttered the 5 words she would never forget. You do not deserve to be a grandmother. The courtroom erupted. Rodrigo shouted it was an injustice. Aunt Mercedes started crying, and Mom froze as if she had been slapped. But the judge hadn't finished. Therefore, I order a permanent restraining order prohibiting any contact between Mrs. Carmen Rodriguez and the minor, Emma. Furthermore, I order the payment of damages in the sum of 50,000 pesos to cover the minor's psychological treatment. Mom finally reacted, shakily standing up. Your Honor, please, she's my granddaughter. I love her. Madam, love is not demonstrated by using children as tools of manipulation. Your right to see your granddaughter ended the moment you chose to traumatize her to punish your son. As we left the courthouse, Rodrigo caught up with me in the parking lot. I hope you're happy. You just destroyed Mom. No, Rodrigo. Mom destroyed herself when she decided to use Emma as a pawn in her manipulation games. If you had been responsible from the beginning, none of this would have happened. That night, Emma slept in her own bed for the first time in months. She didn't have nightmares. When I asked her how she felt, she told me something that both broke and healed my heart. Daddy, I'm not afraid you'll leave me anymore. The judge said you'll always take care of me. 6 months later, Emma is fully recovered, according to Dr. Martinez. Mom tried to contact me several times, but the restraining order is clear. Rodrigo had to get his loan through other means and is finally learning to be responsible for his own decisions. Sometimes, family isn't the blood you share, but the people you choose to protect. And I chose to protect my daughter from a grandmother who believed love is bought with blackmail and demonstrated with manipulation. Justice sometimes comes late, but when it does, the right 5 words can change everything forever. For a long time, I wondered if I did the right thing, if I was too harsh, if I should have forgiven and moved on as everyone told me to. But every time I see Emma playing happily in the park, without fear of being abandoned, without nightmares waking her up crying, I know I made the right decision. I learned that true love doesn't blackmail, doesn't use children as tools, doesn't say, if you love me, you must do this. Real love protects, it doesn't manipulate. I also learned that saying it's family is not a valid excuse to allow emotional abuse. Being a mother, father, brother, or grandmother doesn't give you a license to hurt. Family titles are earned with actions, not inherited with blood. To all the parents listening, our job is to protect our children, not sacrifice them to maintain family peace. When someone hurts your child, it doesn't matter if it's your own mother. Your duty is to defend your child, not the abuser. And if someone in your family uses your children as pawns in their power games, remember the 5 words that changed my life. Some people simply don't deserve certain privileges. Emma is now 7 years old. Sometimes she asks about her grandmother, and I explain that some adults make bad decisions and have to live with the consequences. She understands it better than many adults in my family. Justice doesn't always come quickly, but when it does, it's worth every battle you had to fight to protect what truly matters.